March 31st is not a quiet date in the sky. And you must not treat what is happening now like a small emotional improvement that will pass unnoticed by tomorrow. Mercury and Jupiter are opening a live current of movement, revelation, and expansion. And if your spirit has felt restless, watchful, strangely alert, or as if something important is hovering just beyond the edge of your life, you must understand what is happening now. This is not random anticipation. This is not your imagination searching for hope. This is a doorway moment, a rare one. A moment when a message, a truth, a phone call, a decision, an answer, a return, an approval, a confession, or a piece of news can swing open a path that looked impossible only days ago. And once that doorway opens, the old emotional map you have been living inside may no longer make sense. That is why the energy feels so charged. Mercury is not just the planet of thought. Mercury is the messenger, the signal, the shift in timing, the sentence that changes a future, the information that rearranges a choice, the word that reveals where life has secretly been moving all along. Jupiter is not just growth. Jupiter is enlargement, blessing, acceleration, opportunity, divine permission, and the sudden spaciousness that arrives after a long season of emotional compression. When Mercury and Jupiter align like this, the world can move overnight from waiting to arrival. One closed hallway can become a lit passage. One delayed answer can become an opening large enough to change how you think about work, love, money, purpose, movement, or your own worth. This is why the title matters. The jackpot is not only money. The jackpot is the news, is the message. That changes everything because it reveals that the door was never dead. It was locked in timing, not denied in destiny. A doorway is never just an entrance. It is also a separation. It divides the room you are leaving from the room you are about to enter. That is why this transit has emotional weight, even though it is an abundant one. Many of you have been standing in a threshold season for far longer than you wanted to admit. You have not fully lost faith, but you have felt the cost of waiting. You have not fully given up, but you have noticed how exhaustion changes the shape of hope. You may have been living with mixed signals in relationships, delays in money, silence around something you desperately needed answered, uncertainty in your work, creative frustration, stalled movement, or that haunting sensation that life was preparing something without telling you when it would arrive. That is threshold energy. Threshold energy can be spiritually intense because it asks you to keep standing before a doorway that is not yet opened without letting the delay convince you that nothing is there. Many of you know exactly what that feels like. It feels like checking your phone too often and then pretending you do not care. It feels like telling yourself to be patient while your chest quietly fills with pressure. It feels like trying to stay mature while your inner world grows tired of carrying unanswered questions. It feels like trying to keep your standards high while wondering whether life has forgotten your address. It feels like praying with one part of you and protecting yourself from disappointment with another. You may have been outwardly composed and inwardly stretched. You may have been functioning, but not flowing. You may have been keeping yourself together while sensing that something larger was near, something meaningful, something capable of changing your direction, and yet it would not fully show itself. That is what makes this cosmic moment so emotionally alive. Mercury and Jupiter do not merely send noise, they send signal. They do not simply trigger conversation, they trigger meaningful conversation. They do not just create motion, they create motion with consequence. So what is shifting now is not only external timing, it is internal permission. The future is beginning to communicate with you more clearly. The signs are becoming louder. The patterns are becoming harder to dismiss. The spiritual pressure that has been building beneath your life is beginning to translate itself into language, opportunity, realization, response, and movement. That movement may begin with something very ordinary on the surface. A text, a call, a message, a document, a meeting, a decision, a chance encounter, a piece of information. But do not underestimate small doors. Sometimes the most life-changing doorway looks modest until you step through it. Realize your whole horizon has changed. This is why abundance must be understood correctly. Abundance is not only getting what you want. Abundance is finally entering a room that can hold who you have become. Abundance is emotional room after inner suffocation. Abundance is clarity after confusion. Abundance is support after carrying too much alone. Abundance is a yes after a long string of almosts. Abundance is a direction after the ache of uncertainty. Abundance is a future that no longer requires you to shrink your desires down to a size that feels safe. Jupiter enlarges what Mercury delivers, and that means the message now may carry more significance than you first realize. The person who reaches out may not just be reaching out. The offer may not just be an offer. The realization may not just be in sight. It may be the door itself. You may already feel this doorway in subtle ways. A strange alertness in the chest. Restlessness before sleep. Sudden dreams that seem symbolic rather than random. Repeated numbers, names, places, or ideas. A growing sensation that something is about to break open. Pressure in the throat, as if your body knows words are involved. Waves of fatigue mixed with bursts of clarity. Moments where your heart becomes briefly emotional for no obvious reason. This is important because your body often recognizes the arrival of a new chapter before the conscious mind knows what to name. When Mercury and Jupiter are alive in the field, the nervous system can sense expansion and become electrically sensitive at the same time. You may feel hopeful and cautious, excited and doubtful, open and overwhelmed. That does not mean the blessing is false. It means you have lived through enough delay to become careful at the edge of good news, and yet you must not let caution become a refusal to receive. This is where many people miss abundance. They pray for the door to open, and then when it does, they stand at the frame and interrogate the light. They doubt the invitation. They downplay the moment. They tell themselves not to get too excited. They keep one hand on the old room because disappointment trained them to mistrust expansion. But Jupiter is asking more from you now. It is asking whether you are willing to let life become larger than the story you've built around delay. Mercury is asking whether you can hear the message clearly without translating it through old fear. Together they ask one piercing question. When the doorway opens, will you recognize it, or will you keep calling it coincidence because the blessing arrived in a form you did not expect? This becomes especially powerful in money and work. Mercury-Jupiter energy can unlock opportunity through speech, writing, strategy, networking, content, travel, learning, teaching, contracts, digital work, interviews, offers, collaboration, publishing, business expansion, and communication-based timing. For some of you, the jackpot is literal. A client arrives. A payment clears. A raise appears. A profitable idea becomes obvious. A delayed approval comes through. A proposal lands. A contract opens a larger path. A conversation changes your financial outlook in an afternoon. For others, the breakthrough is not immediate cash, but perspective. You suddenly see how to move. You finally understand how to position yourself. You realize where you have been wasting talent in spaces too small to reward it. You understand that your words, your ideas, your voice, your reach, or your knowledge are more valuable than you have been acting like they are. That realization matters more than people think. One clear idea at the right time can be more valuable than months of exhausted effort under the wrong roof. Jupiter does not only send more, it sends more through the channel that becomes ready to hold it. Mercury asks you to refine the signal. What are you saying about yourself? How do you present your value? Are you waiting passively for discovery, or are you communicating with confidence? Are you still speaking about your dreams like they are fragile side projects? Or are you speaking as someone who understands that what they carry deserves a real doorway into the world? This transit is not here to reward self-erasure. It is here to reward alignment between message and expansion. The jackpot arrives more easily when you stop acting as if your gifts need to apologize for taking up space. Even so, discernment matters. Not every open door is your door. Not every exciting conversation deserves your full trust. Mercury can move fast, and Jupiter can amplify what it touches, including impulsiveness if you are not grounded.
Ice.
So if an opportunity appears, Let your spirit be hopeful and your mind remain awake. Read clearly. Ask good questions. You can notice whether the opening carries coherence or only urgency. Real abundance does not require chaos to prove it is big.
Ow.
Real expansion may move quickly, but it does not ask you to betray your inner knowing. If something is truly yours, you will feel both activation and integrity around it. The doorway may thrill you, but it will not quietly drain your peace. This transit is also correcting something deeper in self-worth, because most people do not only struggle with receiving money, they struggle with receiving evidence that life can actually meet them. They struggle with being chosen. They struggle with letting things go well. They struggle with the emotional adjustment required when the future stops looking starved and starts looking possible. Some of you have been under-asking, over-giving, undercharging, over-explaining, or hiding your intelligence behind caution because disappointment made smallness feel safer than visibility. Mercury and Jupiter are moving against that pattern. Now, they are enlarging your signal. They're asking you to speak from the level of the life you are ready to enter, not the level of the room you have outgrown. This is why the body becomes part of the story. Your body knows when you are nearing a new doorway. Sleep may become lighter because your system is anticipating change. Hydration becomes more important because expansion increases energetic sensitivity. Too much stimulation can leave you scattered. Now, especially if multiple opportunities or revelations begin moving at once, the chest may feel charged. The throat may tighten and then soften when truth is spoken. The mind may race until you give it somewhere sacred to place the message. So protect your nervous system. Walk after intense conversations. Write down what arrives. Step away from noise after receiving important information. Rest more than you think you need to. Breath is part of receiving. Water is part of receiving. Silence is part of receiving. An unregulated body can miss a blessing simply because it has no space to interpret the signal calmly. You may also notice strange symbolic language from life itself. Doorways in dreams, keys, airports, hallways, stairs, books, bridges, windows, phone calls, reopened paths, repeated names. A place you cannot stop thinking about. A person you suddenly hear from after silence. A delayed conversation returning. At exactly the right time, these are not always random. Mercury often speaks through synchronicity when the conscious mind is close to breakthrough, but not fully there yet. Jupiter adds meaning and enlargement to those signs, so pay attention. What keeps repeating? What keeps nudging you? What message seems to be approaching from several different directions at once? Life may already be telling you where the doorway is located, and if this abundance current is going to change everything overnight, then relationships and communication cannot be treated like a side note. This is one of the strongest parts of the transit. What people say now matters. What they avoid saying matters too. Mercury brings language, and Jupiter magnifies consequence. So a conversation now can restore trust, reveal truth, shift a commitment, reopen a bond, expose a misalignment, or make you realize that one connection was never meant to follow you into the next room. Some of you will receive beautiful news and love. Others will receive clarity that becomes a different kind of blessing. Do not underestimate the abundance of clean truth. It is a doorway to watch. Watch how people respond to your expansion. Watch who celebrates your movement without subtly diminishing it. Watch who becomes more open when you speak honestly. Watch who grows more sincere when the future begins to move in your favor. Watch who can communicate clearly and who still survives on vagueness. Because one of the hidden gifts of Mercury Jupiter is that it reveals who is built for your becoming. Some people loved you best when you were uncertain, because uncertainty kept you smaller, quieter, more available to emotional ambiguity. But the doorway you are approaching does not have room for chronic confusion. It does not have room for mixed signals dressed as mystery. It does not have room for connections that thrive on your waiting. This is where the transit becomes emotionally sharp. If someone cares, the communication will become clearer, not more evasive. If someone respects you, their words will begin to carry more alignment with their actions. If a connection is real, it will deepen under truth rather than retreat into Distance the moment emotional clarity enters the room. Mercury exposes how language is being used. Jupiter enlarges the pattern. So notice whether someone communicates with steadiness or only with intensity. Notice whether promises expand or whether excuses do. Notice whether you feel more grounded after speaking with them or more anxious. Notice whether the doorway ahead becomes more visible with them in your life or more obscured. This is also an important time for your own voice. You may need to say what you actually want. You may need to define what has been left unspoken. You may need to ask for clarity instead. A feeding on implication. You may need to tell someone that your life is changing and that you can no longer build your future on partial effort, half honesty, or delayed intention. Mercury Jupiter does not reward passive spiritual theater. It rewards meaningful exchange. So if there is one conversation that could free you, direct you, or reveal where you stand, have it. Not from desperation, not from chasing, but from the grounded recognition that you deserve to know what room you are in and what door is opening next. And if no one brings clarity, that is clarity too. If you speak honestly and are met with fog, that is information. If you ask a clean question and receive confusion instead of truth, that is a message. Do not romanticize closed doors that refuse to identify themselves. The doorway meant for you will not require constant decoding. It may challenge you, yes. It may stretch you, yes. But it will not survive entirely on emotional uncertainty. This matters because abundance is not only what enters, it is what you stop tolerating. Sometimes the jackpot is the end of chasing. What should have spoken clearly by now? So what should you do during this transit? First, become still enough to hear. It's not passive. Still, there is a difference. Step back from noise that makes every signal feel equally urgent. Write down what repeats. Journal the messages, dreams, names, and insights that keep resurfacing. If you receive important news, let yourself breathe before reacting from either fear or fantasy. If an opening appears, ask whether it aligns with your deeper expansion or only with temporary relief. Protect your money from impulsive decisions, but do not hide from investment in what feels structurally sound. Reach out where the nudge feels real. Send the email. Finish the application. Follow up on the conversation. Speak what needs to be spoken, but do not chase people who remain committed to vagueness. Let actions prove which doors are alive. Rest more. Hydrate more. Reduce overstimulation. The body needs room to integrate good news just as much as it needs room to process pain. Watch your chest, throat, and sleep. They may tell you which directions carry truth before your logic does. What if an opportunity excites you, but your body contracts hard around it? Investigate. God, if a conversation is difficult, but your system feels strangely calmer afterward, pay attention. The body is not a passive witness. It is part of the doorway. It knows when you are approaching what is real. You should also become very intentional with language now. The words you use about your future matter. Do not keep introducing your dreams with doubt. Do not keep speaking about your calling like it is a guilty secret. Do not keep minimizing your hope to protect yourself from disappointment. Mercury is listening. Jupiter is enlarging. Speak like someone who understands that the next room may already be preparing itself for you. That does not mean delusion. It means dignity. It means alignment. It means no longer using your own mouth to lock doors you have been praying would open. Now let us move into the 3 signs most affected by this doorway transit. Gemini. This moment reaches you with unusual force because Mercury is your ruler. And when Mercury meets Jupiter in this kind of expansive current, your mind, voice, timing, and personal movement become the stage where the doorway appears first. The message that changes everything overnight may come through communication. A contract, a decision, an opportunity tied to your voice, a travel shift, a new plan, a financial opening, or a piece of truth that rearranges how you see your future. But you must be careful not to split your energy in 10 directions just because the field suddenly feels alive. Your gift is adaptability, but under this sky, your power comes from choosing the door that expands your real life, not just your temporary excitement. Gemini, your old room may have been built from overthinking, inconsistent momentum, and trying to outrun your own depth with constant motion.
This transit is asking more of you.
It is asking you to trust that the right message does not only stimulate
You, it stabilizes you. It sharpens your purpose. It makes your next move cleaner. If you have felt mentally crowded lately, that may change faster than expected. One answer could simplify everything. One opportunity could restore your confidence. One honest conversation could redirect your entire emotional map. Do not underestimate how powerful your words are right now. A doorway is opening through your voice, and the more clearly you speak from self-respect, the more obvious the blessing becomes. Sagittarius, this transit lands in your field like a horizon suddenly breaking open after a long season of emotional weather you could not fully name. Jupiter is your ruler, and when Jupiter is activated by Mercury, life begins speaking to you. In bigger symbols, clearer invitations, faster timing, and truths that carry future-changing consequence. You may have been feeling spiritually restless, hungry for movement, tired of small rooms, tired of waiting for life to reflect the scale of what you know you are capable of. That restlessness was not wasted. It was preparation, doorway opening. For you now may involve travel, teaching, expansion, legal, or institutional approval, publishing, business growth, a relationship conversation that finally becomes honest, or a sudden chance to step into a version of yourself that has felt just out of reach. Sagittarius, your temptation is sometimes to believe the next room is always somewhere else, always farther away, always waiting in a distant future. But this transit is trying to show you that the doorway may be much closer than that. It may. Open through the immediate message, the local move, the practical decision, the conversation in front of you now. Your blessing is not only out there, it is arriving here. Let your faith become precise. Let your hope become embodied. Let this be the season where expansion stops being philosophy and becomes reality. Pisces. This moment may feel especially profound because it does not only open an external doorway, it opens an internal one. Mercury and Jupiter are bringing insight, timing, and emotional permission. Two places in you that have been quietly waiting for a sign that your deeper intuition was right all along. You may have been moving through fog, longing, emotional ambiguity, spiritual fatigue, or that difficult in-between space where your soul sensed the next chapter, but your outer life had not caught up. For you, the jackpot may come through a message. Yes, but it may also come through understanding. A truth lands. A person reveals themselves. And an opportunity appears that feels strangely familiar, as if your spirit recognized it before your mind did.
your challenge under this sky is
not worthiness. It is discernment. You feel everything, and because you feel possibilities so strongly, you can sometimes keep doors emotionally alive long after they have stopped moving. But this transit is here to bless your clarity. The real doorway will not ask you too endlessly. Imagine for it. It will answer. It will move. It will open. You'll receive good news now. Let yourself receive it without guilt. If you receive liberating truth, let yourself call that abundance too. The next room in your life may be built from clean emotional permission, and once you step into it, you may realize how long you were asking too little from the future, even if your sign was not named. This message may still be yours, because Mercury and Jupiter do not only speak to 3 signs, they speak to every soul that has been standing too long before a closed door without losing the memory of light. They speak to everyone who has been trying to remain sincere inside delay. Speak to everyone who has been carrying invisible faith while outward life remains slow to answer. They speak to the part of you that still believes timing can change. Even after disappointment taught you to become cautious, this is the deeper spiritual truth of the transit. The doorway does not open just to give you more. It opens to reveal who you are when more becomes possible. Can you receive without panic? Can you expand without abandoning your center? Can you hear good news without shrinking it into something manageable? Can you let your life become larger than the wound that taught you to expect less? These are not small questions. They are doorway questions. They are the questions that decide whether a blessing becomes a chapter or only a moment. You were too frightened to enter. So if the message arrives, honor it. If the truth lands, honor it. If the opportunity appears, honor it. If the relationship becomes clearer, honor it. If your own voice rises and tells you exactly what must happen next, honor that too. You do not need to force the door. You do not need to perform desperation at the threshold. You do not need to prove your suffering to qualify for the next room. You only need to recognize when the lock turns and have the courage not to run back into the old hallway because it is familiar. The old room has taught you enough. It taught you patience. It taught you discernment. It taught you how heavy uncertainty can become. It taught you the ache of waiting, the cost of mixed signals, the spiritual exhaustion of delayed evidence, the quiet ways the heart protects itself when life takes too long to answer. But this transit is not asking you to stay there. It is asking you to notice that something has changed in the atmosphere. The silence is no longer empty. The future is no longer mute. The room ahead is beginning to call, and that is why you must not ignore this cosmic moment. Because the news that changes everything overnight does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives as the click of a lock. Sometimes it arrives as a sentence. A yes. A truth. A name. A call. A contract. A realization. A return. A release. A clear sign that the path you thought was stalled was secretly being timed. The jackpot is not always loud. Sometimes it is precise. Sometimes it is the exact doorway opening at the exact moment your soul is finally ready to walk through without begging the past for permission. So breathe. Listen closely. Pay attention to what repeats, what opens, what answers, what clarifies, and what suddenly moves after standing still too long. Protect your body. Protect your peace. But do not protect yourself so aggressively that you reject the blessing because it arrived faster than your fear could prepare for. The universe is not asking you to be careless. It is asking you to be available. Available to the message. Available to the movement. Available to the room that can actually hold your next life. Mercury and Jupiter are not merely creating excitement. They are creating passage. They are turning the handle on something that was always yours in potential and is now becoming yours in motion. The doorway is here. The news is near. The future is speaking. And if you have felt it in your chest, in your dreams, in your intuition, in your sudden tears, in your strange hope, then trust this. You are not imagining the opening. You are standing at it. And once you step through, you may never again confuse delay with destiny.